When you put on the headphones, it's time to be serious. Hopefully you're having a fantastic day, whoever you may be, wherever you may be. I'm out in the bus again. I found that this was a pretty good location for me to make videos because it's comfortable. And it's a quite windy day, but it's beautiful out there, so this isn't too noisy out here. But anyhow, I had a few things that I really wanted to touch base on before I kind of lost track of my notes, as usual. And I take a lot of notes, especially when I'm listening to people speak or particular videos pertaining to a subject that I might want to remember. Because, as we all know, notes are crucial to making sure that we don't get skewed in our vision of what we're remembering. The memory is flawed to such an extreme that I don't trust half of the memories of my own when I was young. And so this particular one was about, I somewhat touched on it last night in the video, and I talked about utilitarianism a little bit, but I mentioned the quote, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And how, when I looked that up, it was actually attributed to Spock in a Star Trek. Now, I'm not a Trekkie, but I do remember that episode. And it's just funny how we use pop culture references in order to understand stories, which is something that I have a completely separate video that I'm going to make on, and I find it very important. How Hollywood influences our storytelling and how parents have given up on storytelling to their own children because we've just let others do it for us. And the question being, how many of these stories are, you know, how important is it for a kid to understand the hero's journey? And is that you know, what about mythology? How do we feel about our kids understanding the world through symbols? But more than that, ourselves as well. We think that as adults, we just get the truth, and we don't need the stories anymore, you know, but the storytellers are never gone. It's never over. So anyhow, the one story about the philosophical insight about the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few is based on the concept of utilitarianism, which has many, many flaws in the concept itself. There are a ton of different you know, mind games that you can play where you can have like, you know, problem solving, trying to figure out the old train track lever, you know, do you pull the lever to kill 1 to save 10 kind of thing. And these are the types of, you might even call those koans or Zen koans, but in the Western sense. The idea of these are stories that don't really have an appropriate answer, and that's okay, that's understandable in life. We can't, in other words, just pin everything down to a particular system that's going to work for us. Utilitarianism, socialism, communism, capitalism, they all have their flaws because they're systems. And they're systems that were created by us. So we're just trying to understand the world around us. And in the meantime, what we're trying to do is have utilitarianism on a personal sense. In other words, being able to derive happiness and value from the life that we live. And that's a lot harder than it may seem sometimes. We grow used to the things that we have. We become accustomed. Novelties wear off, you know, and we get stuck in nostalgia, thinking about the past, where we could be, where we wish we were. And when we start dreaming too much of the past or the future, that's when we know that we're not living in the present, obviously. But while we're developing these, you know, these values and these happiness values, I guess, things that bring us, that we derive happiness from, often we wear something, we flip these switches, which I heard metaphorically used. They called them ethical toggles. And I found that pretty interesting. You know, these are issues that nothing is black and white. In other words, you may be all gung-ho for one particular principle or value until this particular situation comes up where you're kind of like, it's a conundrum. I don't know. You know, and so a person may stick by their principles by saying, well, I don't care regardless. You know, an example might be I would never kill someone. And I had someone, we were discussing this one time, and I said, but what if your family was threatened and you knew you could save your entire family, you know, by taking this one evil person out? And they said they still wouldn't do it. They'd put it in God's hands. And I said, well, that's a choice, but it's a pretty pathetic choice, in my opinion, because any animal in the kingdom, regardless of what religion or what system you follow, any animal would protect its family. So that's one thing that we can know. So we can see certain principles that at work, you know, but we can't ever define them simple enough for everyone to say this is a value system for being a human being. So the storytellers, they tell about who we are, and we let Hollywood tell our stories for us. But a lot of that, often people, there's a lot of people who really hate Hollywood and feel that they are basically destroying us, if you will. There are some people that are so opposed to, I don't know, the liberal elite, if you will. I've heard people talk about how Disney is, you know, corrupting and destroying our kids' minds with all that garbage. The thing is, it's up to the parent to choose, you know, and decide what their kid watches. But obviously, these stories do exist. I watched Disney when I was a kid, and I still watch Disney today. And there's a lot of cheesy crap in it, for sure, absolutely. But that continual story of the hero, if we're not going to tell our children, then somebody else is going to. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. The world's not going to change. The world's not going to stop teaching our kids bad things, for example, or feeding us bullshit and ads and selling us products we don't need. That's why it's up to us to use our own heads. So, knowing what we want can allow us to obtain maximum happiness and value from this system that we inhabit, for what it's worth, right? So, now here's a big question, is what about personal happiness versus living right? You know, when you talk about embracing your own power or your own, you know, it reminds me of that old saying, do what thou wilt. And people might bring up someone like Aleister Crowley. And my opinion of Crowley was that he was an abuser, because he was, from what I understand, I wasn't there, but he was, you know, there were children that were living in substandard conditions who were being abused, whether it be sexually, mentally, or otherwise. But that, to me, mental abuse is equivalent to physical abuse and tantamount to the same type of punishment, because it comes down to a person's mind is easily corrupted. And when you have a group of people telling you something, it becomes a cult-like atmosphere. Your personal happiness, if it's derived from escaping from the norms of society, and then and that it's dependent upon other people submitting to your will or partaking in what you consider to be great, it's hard to define, but I don't consider that to be really doing what thou wilt. That's not a true personal happiness that's good for all people. In other words, it's a fine line to walk. For one person, just stealing, being a thief, might be a great lifestyle for them, for example. And then others may suffer because of it, and will suffer because of it, obviously. So, what it comes down to in life is quantity or quality, right? Do you want a better life, or do you want a longer life? And my friend and I talk about this all the time, you know. There's a balance about, you know, you want to go out and party all the time and say, screw it, I just want to live my life up and enjoy it while I'm here. Well, if partying all the time means you forget everything and you die too young to enjoy, you know, some golden years, then that's not, you know, live fast and die young is not probably the best choice for us, but to each his own. But to me, if the opposite, the end of the spectrum, are the extreme health fanatics who are so obsessed with everything they eat, everything they do. Don't do this, this is bad, this will kill you, this will hurt you. And in the end, they end up getting hit by a truck, or some obscure thing happens where you're like, whoa, you know, you never see what's coming. So, in other words, use common sense, live our lives as comfortably as we can without damaging our bodies, our minds, you know, or harming those around us. It seems pretty simple, but for some reason people have such a hard time figuring this out. So it's a balance, and what I call the pendulum, you know. If you live a certain way for a long time and you find that doesn't work, your pendulum may swing the other way. But eventually it will balance out and you'll say, okay, I understand this part of my life, on to move to the next one. So it's about do what thou wilt, but harm no other. And it's about take risks and have fun in your life. Don't let yourself get all wrapped up in worrying about what other people think about you, or especially the people who are telling you how to live your life. You know, anybody who's pushing you really, really hard to live a different way when you know in your heart you're doing okay, tell them to fuck off. It's that simple. Because there are people who want to help us, who think they're doing the right thing, who are trying to help us by saying, hey, if you do this, you will probably be happier. And a lot of the times they are right. But often we know that in our hearts anyway. So, I guess in a nutshell here, we've got other human individuals telling each other how to live our lives, what's important. And what I've found is that the storytellers, and the old myths and legends, they tell us the lessons we need to learn without hearing it from some other person's mouth, because we can become a little bit like, well, what does this guy know about this or that? You know, we become, let's just say, more skeptical of individuals, as we should be, if they're telling us how to live our lives. And so listening to the stories, it's not just one or two individuals, it's passed down over thousands of years. And the more mythology and the more old stories I study, the more I realize that the most valuable asset that we can have in this world, of any trade or skill, is being a good storyteller. And it's something that's in short supply. So, I'm a good speaker to an extent, but I haven't really told a lot of stories. So I'm thinking I might get more into that because it's something I enjoy. I want to be able to sit around the campfire and tell not just a spooky story about something that happened to someone that never existed, but rather a spooky story that helps the kids to learn a lesson. That teaches you not to wander too far, but also don't be so, trapped in your, to finding balance, because all these stories teach us about balance. Some of them are about, being held accountable, or others seeking revenge, or, not doing misdeeds. Very simple, basic things, which I think we could all relate to. So, I'll leave it at that. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon. I'm going to head on out of the bus now, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for coming to Carpo's channel, yo.